All right. Welcome everyone to today's presentation with Teresa Cramer, the Founders Brain. Um, we are Founders Fight Club in collaboration with Sportec Hub Dortmund, and you are here in a series of talks where we do want to talk about innovation and performance, health, and sport. And if you want to stay updated on this whole series, we also have social media channels, or you can follow us on Luma, sign up for a newsletter just to stay updated. But I think this is about us, and I will just give over right to Teresa. She's our guest today. Welcome her. She's a MIT neuroscientist who specialized in brain plasticity, and also, as if the neuroscientist part wasn't enough, the co-founder of a cognitive health company that develops science-backed supplements for mental performance. So for all founders and innovators in the audience, this is for you. We will get right over to her. If you have any questions during the presentation, just feel free to jot them down in the chat wherever you're watching, LinkedIn, YouTube. We will answer them right after. All right. I think I'll hand it over to you. Are you ready?
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Krista. Yeah, it's great to be here. And I want to start the session today by starting with a very simple question. And the question is, if you have ever had a day where you were sitting in front of your laptop, you knew exactly what you had to do, but your brain just wouldn't cooperate. You're not tired enough to sleep, too stressed to stop, but not focused enough to perform. And that moment, it's not a motivational problem, it's a biological problem. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today. It's about how your brain actually works and how we can influence focus, energy, and mood using science that originally comes from the lab but applies directly to everyday life. And for me, this started personally in a very simple way. I was spending my days in a neuroscience lab at MIT in Boston studying how neurons communicate, how they shape behavior, and how plasticity allows the brain to adapt. And then I would step outside of the lab and see people struggling with focus, stress, and fatigue every single day. So there was a very big disconnect. And that's why I'm also very proud to be a co-founder of FoodFor. So 50% of my time is about understanding how the brain works, and the other 50% is about translating that into something practical with one simple goal. Take what we know about the brain and make it usable in real life. Now let's think about a typical workday. You wake up slightly tired, you check your phone, and before your brain has even fully woken up, the input has already begun. Emails, messages, notification, tasks, there's so much going on. And that's why by midday, everything feels harder. You reread sentences, you lose your train of thought, and even simple decisions all of a sudden start to take a lot more effort. So most people think that this is a discipline, that this is due to because I need more discipline, it's a discipline problem. But neuroscience actually tells us something else. Often the brain is stuck in what is called a beta, constant high activation mode. Short term, that beta mode helps us to stay focused, but long term, that elevated stress and cortisol makes recovery exceedingly hard. And that leads us to the second problem, which is rest. Even when we do pause, we rarely truly switch off. We scroll, we reply, we consume more input, so the brain never really fully resets. And then there's the third problem, which is nutrition. The brain needs a constant supply of the right nutrients to keep performing well. Even though it makes up only 2% of your body weight, it consumes around 20% of your total energy. If that support is missing, you're less likely to focus and less likely to recover well, making nutrition an essential building block. So often the real issue is not at all discipline, but rather a brain that is truly underfueled. Now, whenever we talk about nutrition, most people say, but I'm eating well. And most of them really do. The diet looks good. But the problem is that over the past 50 to 70 years, the nutrient content of food has dramatically changed due to agriculture, soil quality, and the overall structure of the food system. And studies have compared that micronutrient decline over the past 50 years have shown that Vitamin C in apples, as an example, has dropped by 48%. Iron has lost 76% of its spinach has lost 76% of its iron, and carrots have lost 48% of their magnesium. Now, the consequence of that is that 1 in 3 people globally actually experience micronutrient deficiencies despite obtaining sufficient calories. Now, even in developed countries like Switzerland, that translates to 59% of people having a vitamin D deficiency, and 39% further lack vitamin A and zinc, as an example. So nutrition is not necessarily about eating bad food. It's about the biological gap between what our brain needs in today's environment and what we can get from our foods. And to understand that, we need to look a little bit closer at how the brain actually works, and it runs on biochemistry. Everything you experience, your focus, motivation, and your mood, is driven by neurotransmitters and their associated pathways. Neurotransmitters are tiny messengers in your brain that transmit signals between neurons to execute a specific function. And as an example, now I want to look at the serotonin pathway. Serotonin is the neurotransmitter which is responsible for happiness and an overall state of content and well-being. This neurotransmitter is produced in the ref nuclei in the brainstem. Afterwards being produced, it's transducted across the entire brain until it's finally released in cortical regions to give you that subjective sensation of well-being and a good mood. Now, of course, these neurotransmitters like serotonin and others don't just appear. They are built from nutrients, from amino acids, vitamins, and minerals, everything that comes from your diet. So what we consume directly determines what our brains can produce, and that in turn determines how well we can feel and perform. So usually when people say, I can't focus, I feel drained, I'm stressed, or I can't sleep, from a neuroscience perspective, we can translate that into very specific neurotransmitter deficits. Low dopamine levels, for example, mean that there's lack of drive and inability to focus. Low serotonin levels, on the other hand, give you low mood and irritability. Low GABA levels lead to inner tension and restlessness, while low ATP levels result in fatigue and brain fog. And this is not abstract, it's very measurable neuroscience. And mental performance in this context is the biochemical output of how well these neurotransmitters work. Now, to translate that into real life, I want to give you some funky examples. This slide visualizes how much of a given food you would have to eat to support that specific neurotransmitter. For example, to support serotonin, your neurotransmitter responsible for good mood, you would roughly have to eat 25 bananas to get the required amount of vitamin B6. And you would have to eat 1.3 kilograms of broccoli to get sufficient levels of tryptophan. So these are very crazy examples. For dopamine, you would have to eat roughly 1.25 kilograms of spinach to get the right amount of zinc, and drink 2.5 to 5 liters of green tea to get sufficient L-theanine to support your dopamine production. And this is actually based on biochemical requirements, and it highlights a key problem. Meeting optimal levels through diet alone today is extremely difficult. Of course, it's not impractical, but as you can see, it's not impossible, but as you can see, it's definitely impractical. And this specific gap is exactly the reason why some people have to turn to something else, meaning they have to turn to pharmacological solutions like prescription drugs. Mechanistically, these prescription drugs modulate neurotransmitter levels as well. For example, commonly prescribed against depression are SSRIs, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which elevate your serotonin levels. For ADHD, the most commonly prescribed drugs are Ritalin or Adderall, which work by increasing your dopamine levels. Benzodiazepines are the common drugs prescribed for anxiety disorders or insomnia and sleep disorders, and they push hard on your GABA levels. Modafinil and other wakefulness-promoting drugs are prescribed for chronic fatigue syndrome and daytime sleepiness, and they affect your ATP-related systems. Now, while these drugs work very powerfully, they override the system and, of course, thus come with significant side effects. And these include sexual dysfunction, emotional blunting, appetite loss or gain, sedation, insomnia, as well, of course, as addiction, dependence, and tolerance. So the question really became whether we can support these systems which clearly work naturally instead of pharmacology. And at FoodFor, this is exactly our mission. We have targeted the same neurotransmitter systems using a different approach. Instead of forcing neurotransmitter activity like prescription drugs, we provide the building blocks that the brain naturally uses. And instead of pushing the brain, we support it nutritionally. So each of our 4 shots targets a specific neurotransmitter system. Focus is built around supporting the production and transmission of your dopamine neurotransmitter. Boost is built around supporting your ATP energy metabolism. Euphoria supports serotonin production and transmission. And calm supports your GABA production and transmission. And the key idea behind FoodFor is very simple. Give your brain what it needs and let it do what it's designed to do. Our shots are thus precisely formulated, contain no sugar, no overdosing, and enable fast absorption due to the liquid format. Thereby, we're not replacing or artificially overriding the brain's natural neurotransmitter system, we are supporting it. But of course, support only matters if it actually works. And to do that, to prove that, we actually tested our FoodFor shots in a randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled study. And what we saw were measurable changes in real cognitive performance, meaning that by using the same neurotransmitter target, we were actually able to support these neurotransmitters effectively, and we could also prove it without intervening pharmacologically. In our focal shot with the target dopamine, we were able to detect a 60% reduction in concentration errors, and 77% of participants improved their memory performance. For our euphoria shot, which targets serotonin and good mood, we were able to detect 78% of participants and felt more positively and emotionally balanced, while 83% reported greater emotional clarity as well as openness with others. For our calm shot, which targets GABA, we found a 69% increase in parasympathetic activity, which is an indicator of restlessness within the body during sleep. And we also found that it helps 71% of participants to recover more effectively during sleep. And importantly, these effects were observed within 90 minutes using objective measures. So we didn't just ask people how they felt, we actually used objective measures against the placebo control. So we know that it works. So we are not just talking theory here, that is the closing point. We're measurably improving functional outcomes for everyone out there. So if there's one thing that I would like you to take away with today, it's this, that your brain is something that we use every day. We want to use it every day, and it's definitely something that we need and have to support. And right now, most people are trying to perform at their highest of levels without giving their brain the resources it actually needs. And our mission is really to change that, to take neuroscience out of the lab and make it work in real life. That is it, Christoph, for now. And of course, if you want to check us out, go to our website and our Instagram.
All right. Thank you so much, Teresa. It was very interesting and also kind of shocking to hear about the amount of food that we would have to eat to fuel our brain, and how also the nutrients in those foods went down over the last couple years, couple decades. So yeah, that was very cool insights. Let's first see if we have any questions from the audience. I don't see any. Maybe there will come some. So if any questions come up during the discussion, always feel free to write them down in the chat. I do want to start off this little discussion we're gonna have on a personal note, you are a researcher, which as a job in itself sounds pretty stressful, but you are also a co-founder of your own business, of your own startup. When was the last time that you experienced those problems of like being in beta mode all the time, not being able to come down, and maybe needed your own product? Yeah, give us some like real life example from how we can benefit from all these neurotransmitters.
And yeah, I think every founder or everyone who's working intensely has probably experienced these points. And I know that everyone has a different sensitivity when it comes to noticing when we reach that point. And I do know that my sensitivity is pretty low. So usually the moment I realize I'm overworked, it's usually too late. So that's one thing that I've learned over the last couple of years doing this now. And in those moments, what helps me the most is sleep. And I think sleep for everyone is the most important supporter. That's why specifically supporting my neurotransmitter GABA, so the calm shot, is incredibly valuable for me. My mood is down, but in this point, sleep is what fixes the key pillars of everything else. Let's put it this way.
Okay. Very cool insight. I think it's very important what you said, that everyone is kind of different. So maybe not everyone needs every neurotransmitter, but you can kind of like find out which one's the one you need the most, and it helps you regulate. Um, I've actually had a very cool question about the placebo effect, but you kind of already mentioned that in your study. So you did like a blindfolded study, if I remember it right, to exactly counter that placebo effect intuition. So yeah, I think we already covered that.
Yeah,
So
but I do think it's important to do this because the way we designed our study, we very much designed it like one would test a prescription drug, for example, and those have to be placebo controlled. But I think that for all consumers out there, it's very difficult to separate placebo from the actual effect of a supplement, especially given the reputation that most supplements have. And that's why for us it is very important to use the placebo to prove that we do have a strong immediate effect within 90 minutes.
okay, very cool. That's exactly the thing I needed to move on to the next question, actually, which would be the comparison of like your product and medication. I think you've mentioned the side effects. Are those lower in your product, and why is that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? You are wondering about side effects in
Yeah,
our
sure.
products or in the prescription drugs?
So you've mentioned that the prescription drugs
Yeah.
do have side effects. I was wondering about if there are any with your products, or if the doses are maybe in a range that are lower
Oh.
to like counter those side effects.
Yeah, so prescription drugs, obviously, they push on a system very hard and they are overriding it. So it's common to have these side effects. What we are doing in our approach, we're giving the body to use the building blocks as it sees fit. So by default, that does not result in huge side effects. And in addition to that, actually, we don't have any side effects. The only and that is because the brain knows what it needs to do once you give it the building blocks it actually needs to build a certain neurotransmitter.
So could these supplements actually substitute medication? Like, could you use the focus supplement to, let's not say medicate, but to counter problems people with ADHD have, for example?
We do actually have a couple of customers which are diagnosed with ADHD and they find that the focus shot incredibly helps them. But of course, we are a nutritional supplement. We are not as strong as a prescription drug. So I think that's important to keep in mind. But it's beautiful to hear that we can help somebody instead of tuning up their drug dose, they can actually support themselves in a different way with FoodFor.
Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is it can help in certain limits.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. You have mentioned that when you're in beta mode and you realize it's all getting a little too much, you rely mostly on sleep. Is that maybe the underlying problem that people don't get enough rest from like their day-to-day life and they kind of try to supplement too much? Do you have that problem with your clients that they get into a such a restless state that also your supplements cannot help them anymore?
I think that there's a point of no return when really nothing can help. So I do
Okay.
think that if somebody is at that a limit, then one has to see a doctor. And I'm talking about something like burnout, for example. This is a very serious condition where whatever you do, it won't be enough. I mean, even people that I know who have had to go through burnouts, even if they sleep a week, 10 hours a day, it doesn't fix them right away because there's a deeper underlying problem. Now, when it comes to beta mode, what you mentioned earlier, we're naturally supposed, and so the amount of beta which is sustainable is 20% of the day. But today we spend over 60% of our day in beta mode, and that of course comes at a cost over time. So of course, supporting the system to manage this better becomes more and more important.
Mhm. Yeah, I think especially in our like modern day life with yeah,
Yeah,
with
totally.
like all the appliances, social media, you're like constantly under fire, aren't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, nice. I think we do have probably a couple founders and innovators in the audience. And I know for myself that like those people sometimes just really want the kick that gives like that comes from energy drinks and just like that immediate boost. What would you say to them? Is it still valuable to like get that boost sometimes, or do you have a better alternative with your product?
I think that getting the kick with a double espresso or Red Bull is in, and it's actually known that when you're in this high stimulated state, which these type of products give you, your focus actually declines. To be properly focused and to reach that tunnel, you actually need to be a little bit calmer. And that's when this sort of like the most creative and problem solving type of memory and executive function kicks in. And that's why I would love to ask them to try out FoodFor, because once they're in that calm tunnel, they would enjoy that calm tunnel a lot more than the cake. That would be my opinion.
Okay, so maybe just try it and see what fits your
Yeah.
situation best. Okay. We actually have gotten a couple questions in the chat. They just came in now. So maybe let's go over them. And let's just start with the very first one, which was from Andrea. She asked, "What?" Oh, let me just read it to you. By
Mm-hmm.
coincidence, I attended a basic nutrition coaching today. What I noticed is that this kind of research is usually not included, or there does not seem to be a lot of knowledge. How can this be leveraged?
I do think that the way we used to think about nutrition, it used to be very body centric. So everything that's excluding the head. With the techniques and the understanding we have today of the brain, it's becoming much, much more included, sort of that the brain has special needs. And for the first time, to be fair, we can also measure what the brain actually needs. For a long time, we couldn't do that.
Mhm.
And I think the reason why, even though the neuroscience field is growing, it's still not a topic which is talked often enough about. And I think that's why when it comes to basic nutrition coaches, it tends to be forgotten.
Mhm.
That's that would be my guess. But I think it's sad. They should.
Do you think it's only a matter of time before this knowledge moves into day-to-day practice, or is there still active work to do to get it there?
I think when you look at the statistics of psychiatric diseases, burnouts, anxiety, ADHD, all of them are rising massively. So I think this is already giving a huge push for everyone to pay more attention to the brain, and nutrition will immediately follow. So I don't think it will take that long. And sadly, the push is happening naturally already because of the way we have been living for the last 20 to 40 years. And it's reflected in the striking rise in diagnosis across diseases and disorders.
Yeah, very interesting. Let's move on to the next question, maybe. We've got Founders Fight Club. Looking at performance, what do you recommend when somebody wants to actually enhance performance?
Yeah, now I would like to ask either it's physical performance or mental performance. I think that would be, because those are two different types of topics.
Let's see if we get an answer right away. But I think if not, we can just. Oh, I think we got. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, that's what I thought.
Sure. And yeah, I think for mental performance, if you truly want to boost it, that's also the question again. How do you define a performance boost? For me, this would always mean I'm in the tunnel. For other people, it would mean they are highly alert. But highly alert can also mean erratic. So there are two different types of how you define sort of performance. So it depends on what they exactly mean by that. But of course, I would suggest the focus shot. And when it comes to the body, they're of course having a good metabolism and a good ADP system to have good functioning mitochondria. And there are other supplements which can also help with that, which are more bodily focused, like NAD plus or coenzyme Q, and those can be incredibly valuable to help bodily performance and physical strength.
Okay, yeah, that's are very cool insights. I think we've got one more. Do you have a perspective on how to keep a functional brain into old age?
Yeah, as painful as it is, I think one should always try to learn something new every day, something small, but to never too much relax and lean back. Always try to do something new and learn something new. That's the ultimate recipe for keeping your brain healthy for the longest time.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
I think also learning something new in like both mental and probably also physical ways. Right?
Yeah. And if there's one specific supplement I would have to recommend, it would probably be spermidine. I think that's the best one out there, the most evidence we have right now.
Okay. What exactly does that one do? Can you just give us a real quick breakdown?
Spermidine is one of these. Spermidine is actually, now I don't know the word, Weizenkeime. Do you happen to know what Weizenkeime is in English? I don't think
I can look it up if you give me a second. Wheat or wet germ, something like that.
That's super interesting because it gave me something. Okay, then let's just go with that.
Yeah.
One thing that spermidine is incredibly good at, that it helps your body to clean itself. And a lot of the time, especially when it comes to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer, which is the result of the accumulation of amyloid beta plaques, it's because the self-cleanup system does not work efficiently. And spermidine is an incredible supporter that supports that self-cleaning system in a way.
Okay, thank you for the breakdown. It's always nice when you can explain very complex topics in words that everybody else can understand. So props to you. And I think we are almost out of time, but I have maybe a practical question for you to round this all up. We are, like we said, already very busy in our day-to-day lives, especially when we're talking to founders, innovators. What would be the one thing or the two things that you would recommend to busy people? How can they implement those extra amino acids into their day-to-day life without it adding more stress to to the task they're already doing? How do we make it that it's like not just another thing on your to-do list?
Yeah, and that's the problem, because if you really want to read up on what your body needs and what it do, it takes a lot of time. And I think that because everyone is so busy, and convenient solutions are becoming more and more popular, and nobody wants to swallow 10 pills anymore. So that's why I think that convenient solution, when it's about basic protein content, of course, a protein shake is always good. I think that FoodFor is an incredibly convenient solution for everyone who doesn't have the time to read up on it. It doesn't need to be consumed as a routine, but rather when you need it. So I think that these are, and that this would be a good guess.
Okay. Thank you so much. Um, let's check the chat one more time. I think there haven't been any new messages. Is there anything else from your side that we have not covered yet that you would want to add to this conversation?
No, I'm happy. I would hope that everyone gives FoodFor a shot and tries it out, because it's a game changer.
All right. Then I'd say thank you, Teresa. It was a very cool conversation with you. Thank you for joining us today. And yeah, everyone who's interested in either knowing more about the base camp or more about what Teresa does, you can just give us a follow on the socials, on LinkedIn, on yeah, just like wherever you can find us, on Luma. Yeah, that would be cool. Or you just sign up for our newsletter if you're interested, of course. All right.
Awesome.
I think
Thank you so much.
all right. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Ciao.